ready. The week before Christmas, when snow seemed to lie thickest, was the moment for carol singing. And when I think back to those nights, it is to the crunch of snow and to the lights of lanterns on it. Carol singing in my village was like haymaking, blackberrying, stone clearing, and wishing people a happy Easter. It was one of our seasonal perks. By instinct, we knew just when to begin it. A day too soon, and we should have been unwelcome. A day too late, and we should have received lean looks from people whose bounty was already exhausted. When the true moment came, exactly balanced, we recognised it and were ready. So as soon as the wood had been stacked in the oven to dry for the morning fire, we put on our scarves and went out through the streets, calling loudly between our hands till the various boys who knew the signal ran out from their houses to join us. One by one they came stumbling over the snow, swinging their lanterns around their heads and shouting and coughing horribly. "Coming carol barking then?" We were the church choir, so no answer was necessary. For a year we had praised the Lord out of key, and as a reward for this service, on top of the outing, we now had the right to visit all the big houses, to sing our carols, to collect our tribute. To work them all in, it meant a 5-mile foot journey over wild and generally snowed up country. So the first thing we did was to plan our route, or formality, as the route never changed. All the same, we blew on our fingers and argued, and then we chose our leader. This was not binding, for we all fancied ourselves as leader, and he who started the night in that position usually trailed home with a bloody nose. 8 of us set out that night. There was Sixpence, the tanner, who had never sung in his life. He just worked his mouth in church. His brothers, Horace and Boney, who were always fighting everybody and always getting the worst of it. Clergy Green, the preaching maniac, Walt the bully, and my 2 brothers. As we went down the lane, other boys from other villages were already about the hills, bawling, "King Wenceslas," and shouting through keyholes, "Knock on the knocker, ring on the bell, give us a penny for singing so well." They weren't an approved charity as we were, the choir, but competition was in the air. Our first call, as usual, was to the house of the squire, and we trooped nervously down his drive. For light we had candles in marmalade jars, suspended on loops of string, and they threw pale gleams on the towering snowdrifts that stood on each side of the drive. A blizzard was blowing, but we were well wrapped up, with army puttees on our legs, woolen hats on our heads, and several scarves around our ears. As we approached the big house across its white silent lawns, we too grew respectfully silent. The lake nearby was stiff and black, the waterfall frozen and still. We arranged ourselves, shuffling around the big front door, then knocked and announced, "The choir!" A maid bore the tidings of our arrival away into the echoing distances of the house, and while we waited, we cleared our throats noisily. Then she came back, and the door was left ajar for us, and we were bidden to begin. We brought no music, for the carols are in our heads. "Let's give 'em Wild Shepherds," said Jack, and we began in confusion, plunging into a wreckage of keys, of different words and tempo, but we gathered our strength, and he who sang the loudest took the rest of us with him, and the carol took shape, if not sweetness. This huge stone house with its ivied walls was always a mystery to us. What were those gables, those rooms and attics, those narrow windows veiled by the cedar trees? As we sang Wild Shepherds, we craned our necks, gaping into the lamplit hall, which we had never entered, staring at the muskets and untenanted chairs, the great tapestries furred by dust, until suddenly, on the stairs, we saw the old squire himself, standing and listening with his head on one side. He didn't move until we'd finished, and then slowly he tottered towards us, dropped 2 coins in our box with a trembling hand, and scratched his name in the book we carried. He gave each of us a long look with his moist blind eyes, and then turned away in silence. As though released from a spell, we took a few sedate steps, then broke into a run for the gate. We didn't stop until we were out of the grounds, impatient at last to discover the extent of his bounty. We squatted by the cowsheds, held our lanterns over the book, and saw that he had written 2 shillings, which was quite a good start. No one of any worth in the district would dare give us less than the squire. So, with money in the box, we pushed on up the valley, pouring scorn on each other's performances. Confident now, we began to consider our quality and whether one carol was not better suited to us than another. Horace, Walt said, shouldn't sing at all. His voice was beginning to break. Horace disputed this, and there was a brief token battle, and they fought as they walked, kicking up divots of snow. And then they forgot it, and Horace still sang. Steadily we worked through the length of the valley, going from house to house, visiting the lesser and greater gentry, the farmers, the doctors, the merchants, the majors, and other exalted persons. It was freezing hard and blowing too, yet not for a moment did we feel the cold. The snow blew into our faces, into our eyes and mouths, soaked through our puttees, got into our boots and dripped from our woolen caps. But we didn't care. The collecting box grew heavier, and the list of names in the book longer and more extravagant, each trying to outdo the other. Mile after mile we went, fighting against the wind, falling into snowdrifts and navigating by the lights of the houses. And yet we never saw our audience. We called at house after house. We sang in courtyards and porches, outside windows or in damp gloom of hallways. We heard voices from hidden rooms. We smelt rich clothes and strange hot food. We saw maids bearing in dishes or carrying away coffee cups. We received nuts, cakes, figs, preserved ginger, dates, cough drops, and money, but we never once saw our patrons. We sang, as it were, at the castle walls, and apart from the squire, who had shown himself to prove that he was still alive, we never expected it otherwise. As the night drew on, there was trouble with Boney. Noel, for instance, had a rousing harmony which Boney persisted in singing, and singing flat. The others forbade him to sing at all, and Boney said he would fight us, and picking himself up, he agreed we were right. And then he disappeared altogether. He just turned away and walked into the snow, and wouldn't answer when we called him back. Much later, as we reached a far point in the valley, somebody said, "Hark!" and we stopped to listen, and far away across the fields from the distant village came the sound of a frail voice singing "Noel," and singing it flat. It was Boney, branching out on his own. We approached our last house high up on the hill, the place of Joseph the farmer. For him we had chosen a special carol which was about the other Joseph, so that we always felt that singing it added a spicy cheek to the night. The last stretch of country to reach his farm was perhaps the most difficult of all. In these rough, bare lanes, open to all winds, sheep were buried and wagons lost. Huddled together, we tramped in one another's footsteps. Powdered snow blew into our screwed-up eyes. The candles burnt low and some blew out altogether, and we talked loudly above the gale. Crossing at last all the frozen mill streams, we climbed up to Joseph's farm. Sheltered by trees, warm on its bed of snow, it seemed always to be like this. As always it was late, as always this was our final call. The snow had a fine crust upon it, and the old trees sparkled like tinsel. We grouped ourselves round the farmhouse porch. The sky cleared. The broad streams of stars ran down over the valley away to Wales. On Slad's white slopes, seen through the black sticks of its wood, some red lamps still burned in the windows. Everything was quiet. Everywhere was the faint crackling and silence of the winter night, and we started singing. and we were all moved by the words and the sudden trueness of our voices. Pure and very clear and breathless, we sang. As Joseph was a-walking, he heard an angel sing, "This night shall be the birth time of Christ our heavenly King. He neither shall be borned in housen nor in hall, but in a place of paradise, but in an oxen's stall." And 2,000 Christmases became real to us then. The houses, the halls, the places of paradise had all been visited. The stars were bright to guide the kings through the snow. And across the farmyard we could hear the beasts in their stalls. We were given roast apples and hot mince pies. In our nostrils were spices like myrrh, and in our wooden box, as we headed back for the village, there were golden gifts for all.